Welcome to this instructional video on using AWS Identity and Access Management by Backspace Academy. So in this video we're just going to go through creating users using the IAM console and then creating a group to contain those users that we can assign those users to, and giving that group permissions so that when users are assigned to a group they inherit those permissions from the group. We're also going to look at IAM roles, what they are, why they're important, and how you would use them and the benefits of using those. We're then going to look at creating an account password policy. And then finally we're going to download a credentials report so that we can see a bird's eye view of our account and the credentials and users and roles and groups that are assigned within that account. So the first thing we do is jump into the IAM console. So under Administration and Security, we'll click on IAM. Okay, so your IAM console would probably look a little bit different to this because we've I've created a user for a lab that we had previously and a role there as well. So just looking here, we'll give you some security status, which is quite good. So the first thing there, and most importantly, is activate multi-factor authentication on your root account. So you need to make sure that happens. This is just an account that we just set up just for the lab. We don't use it for anything else, and it doesn't really have anything inside it. But certainly you need to enable MFA on your root account for your own personal use. And of course for your own your employer to make sure that they're safe as well. So that's essential. We look there creating individual IAM users. So we've created an IAM user there, but we don't have any groups to assign permissions to. So we have a user here that doesn't have any permissions assigned to that user directly, and we're going to create a group to put that user in. And we're going to apply an IAM password policy as well. So the first thing we're going to do is create a group to put this user in. So we just go into groups, create new group. So we're just going to call them this group developers. Go to the next step. So we need to attach a policy. So that will define what permissions are available to these developers. So you probably look at attaching a policy, a restrictive policy maybe, but we're just going to give full administrator access for our developers, and we'll click on the next step. So that's what we're going to do there. Group name developers and policies administrator access, and we'll create that group. Okay, so there it is. So the next thing we can do is we can add our users to that group. Okay, so there's our user, and we're going to add that user in. Okay, so we click on it now. So there we can see we have the ARN for the group, and we've got our user that's been added to that group, and we've got the permissions here, which is administrator access. So that looks fine. So now we're going to add another user in there. So going to user, create a new user. Okay, so just going to call that user J Smith. We want to generate an access key for that user so that they have access through the software development kits and for doing REST and SOAP requests, and also for using the CLI tools as well. Okay, so that's been successfully created, and then what we would want to do is to download these security credentials. So we download those, and so there's the access key ID and the secret access key for J Smith. Okay, so there we have another user there, but he's not assigned to a group. Okay, so we'll just assign this and user actions. Add user to a group, and we'll select that group and add to groups. So now when we have a look at him, he's going to be part of the developers group. And there we have that. And inherits, we didn't actually assign any access permissions there, but because he is in the developers group, he inherits administrator access. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is creating a password policy for the account. So we're going to go into account settings, and we're going to apply a password policy in there. So we're going to require at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, and one number. So there's a whole heap of things there that you can add as well, but that's pretty normal for most passwords. So apply that password policy there. And that's been done. So we'll go back into our users, and let's have a look at Jay Smith again. So he doesn't have a password set. So let's have a look here. And has password? No. So we'll just go back in there. User actions, manage password. Okay, so we're going to assign an auto-generated password for this person, and we're going to require them to create a new password the next time they sign in. So it's going to apply that, and then that will generate a password for that user. So we would email that password out to that user. They would log in, and then they would be asked to change their password after logging in. So that's Jay Smith all set up there, ready to go. So with users, they won't be logging in directly into the root account, so they'll have a different login address. So if you just go into dashboard here, and you can see here there is an IAM user sign-in link. So those users would use their IAM username and their password that's been generated for them, and then they would sign in, and then they would be asked to change their password. So just go into that and have a look and see what it's like. Okay, so there you can see that it'll have the account details there, and you can sign into that with your username and password. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have a look at is roles. So roles are very important because you use them in a number of ways, and the main way you would use them would be for example, if you had a virtual private cloud and you didn't want those resources inside that VPC to be accessed directly, you could set up a Bastion host inside that VPC, and you would have to connect into that Bastion host, and then that Bastion host would have access within the VPC. Another benefit of roles is that you can use roles to delegate access to your account to users in other AWS accounts. So roles provide a very useful service for security, and quite essential to ensuring security, especially in a VPC environment. So what we'll do now is jump into roles, and we'll have a look at that. So we've already, I've already got here a NAT role. So that's a NAT instance, or a role assigned to a NAT instance that is used by databases to access outside of VPC into the wider internet to download updates for their application and whatever. So I'm just going to create a new role. So I'm just going to call this Bastion, and next step. And so we're going to assign a role to a Bastion host, which is an EC2 instance. So we've got here, allows EC2 instances to call AWS services on your behalf. So if you connect to an EC2 instance that has this role assigned to it, you'll be able to connect through to other resources within that VPC. So it's going to select that one, and we're going to attach a policy for that. So for that EC2 instance, so we'll give that administrator accesses again. Okay, so there we have the review. So we've created a Bastion role. We're calling it Bastion. The role name is there, and it's for the EC2 service, and it is for administrator access. So we'll create role, and there it is. So the next thing we're going to look at now is to have a look at a credentials report, which is very important when you have a large organisation with a lot of users, a lot of roles being created, a lot of resources being used and whatever. So it's very good to have a credentials report to see what's going on. So we'll just download that. So just go into credentials report and we'll download that report. Okay, so the report's downloaded. I'm just going to open that up. Okay, so just quickly format it. Okay, so we can see there we've got the user, we've got our root account here, the ARN for our root account, when that was created, which is basically when our account was actually created. Password was when last used. And we've got the same here for our pcody-lab that we originally had before we started. So one thing to notice here is that the actual user that we created just now is not appearing on here. And the reason for that is that these are updated every 4 hours. So if you've created a status report in the last 4 hours, it will show the one that you've created previously. So you need to wait another 4 hours before you get an updated report. So if you find stuff's missing from there, it just means you need to give it a bit more time to allow the AWS service to compile a new report and get it out to you. So that's another very good tool there that helps you keep a control of your users. And it's good to see, you know, when your password was last changed or when it was last used. So it's good to get rid of accounts that are no longer required, and you know, people have left the organisation and they haven't been removed from the system. So very good tool there. So that's all we need to show now on IAM. So I'll see you in the next lesson.